to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Data Magnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated.
Anyways, time for the story. Human from Lost Sanity, meet the Night Beast from Nyx. You may now kill each other.
No. She wasn't some Night Beast. Not at all. Just a woman. A farm girl, really, with a meaningless title. An unimportant woman, hardly worth mentioning, actually. Harrenus silently cursed the warden as the creature, this man named Human, blindly searched for her. She tried to secrete herself into the corner of the cage with as little sound as possible. It didn't work. She could see the man's eyes tracking her, honing in on her hiding spot. Like the others, she doubted it could not see without the sun, but that seemed to make little to no difference. She'd made almost no sound, but we could hear her moving, maybe even breathing. She felt sure of it. The damn thing came from a place called Lost Sanity, too. With a name like that, the place could have been some fantastic underworld from the epic poem where beings didn't need sight to see. For the first time in weeks, her rage had fully given way to fear. She heard her cage opening, the clockwork engines deep within cycling. At any point, the time that she had arrived in this cursed dungeon until now, she would have prayed for her cell to be open. Now, she fervently prayed for it to remain shut. "What the hell is a Night Beast?" the human asked, his eyes slightly shifting to the whining hinge. She gulped. It wasn't her. No, definitely not her. No way. She began to wonder if one of her skeleton friends could maybe cover for her. Rudigatha, Olfinbler, Terrangard, anyone. None volunteered. Traitors, the lot of them. "Yeah, Doom!" shouted the warden. Doom? If they fought and she actually ended up killing this man, it would be an absolute miracle. Against one of her fellow dames, strikes to the head like the one she just delivered would have laid them all low to a woman, if even for just a moment. That huge man hadn't even lost his footing. She was hardly his doom. A better descriptor might be more difficult than average sparring dummy. "She is a carnivorous killing machine with razor-sharp teeth, massive claws, and a taste for intelligent meat. We'll see who survives." All technically true, but really. "What the feck?" screamed the human, banging on the door with lightning fast punches. From across the room, she could feel each impact in her bones. She didn't want to be anywhere near this creature. "You want me to fight some animal? What is this, some kind of gladiator blood sport? Why would you do that? What? I'm a simple man, a small, defenseless herbivore. You're just going to feed me to it? Why? I have no chance." It was bargaining, or it knew she was listening and hoping to lull her into complacency. Either way, she was highly skeptical. "Ha! It's not any bigger than you," said the warden. "You might stand a chance." "Jesus Christ, mountain lions aren't any bigger than me either," the human yelled back. "When I get out of here, I'll feckin' kill you, slaver scum." And now she wanted to be his friend. That might have been easier said than done. Sure, she could just march right up to the gentleman, introduce herself, explain herself and her terrible mistake, and hope for the best. It might work. The second rule of being taken prisoner was to find allies and unite with your fellow prisoners around a common goals of resistance and escape. They certainly had a common enemy, and the gentleman was surely intelligent enough to see that. On the other hand, this man could be extremely dangerous, and might not even be in his right mind, if the name of his homeland meant anything. Not only that, but she could clearly see and smell that she'd drawn first blood. Though she would seek his forgiveness, he need not offer it, and without it, he was entitled to strike her down. And at that moment, he seemed rather angry. Harrenus pushed all of fear and doubt aside. Only cooperation would lead to salvation. She took a deep breath and drew herself up to her full height and slowly strode towards the human. They were not going to fight for the sadist's amusement. They were going to clear this up like a lady and a gentleman that they were. She would first work up the courage to introduce herself to the human, and together the pair would find a way out of this mess. For the first time since being taken, she began to feel a glimmer of hope. "If you get out of here, you can come find me, human," said the warden from the wall. "I think the beast talking towards you right now will have something else to say about that." In a flash, it turned from the warden's voice and looked her right in the eyes. She froze. "Crap! It had been playing blind." "Not if I kill it first, you son of a bark!" "Wait, stop! My name is Aranus of the Karamast, daughter of—" The world went white around her, and she fell to her knees. She couldn't breathe. She had to vomit, but couldn't gag. Her limbs flew to her throat as she gasped for air, frantically trying to roll away from the human as the looming man stalked towards her. She hadn't even seen what had happened. He'd moved so fast. It hit her hard in the throat, either with a punch or using a hand like a knife to jab or slash. It hadn't been as effective as a claw kick might have been, but it struck faster and would be no less deadly if it happened a second time. Regaining her bearings, she began scooting backwards away from the man. With one hand, she searched for bones and pulled herself along. With the other, she massaged her almost useless throat. With her legs, she used one to push herself away, holding the other aloft but ready to kick out at the human's torso. "Please," she croaked, rubbing her throat, imploring the lunatic man, "stop." "Mark, arf, bark, bark." It danced around her, clearly wary of a clawed foot. She struck out, barely tearing its silk tunic as it dodged. She had been taught never to hit a gentleman, but she would definitely make an exception in this case. It pushed towards her from the side, and she moved back in equal measure. It hurt to breathe, and she was fast running out of room to maneuver. She kicked again, and it dodged just as quickly. "My name, Aranus," she wheezed again, her words sounding strangled. She had to explain that she was a person. Damn it, not a beast. "Daughter of Lady Jurisalka." This time, the man lunged with an arm. She kicked at it and missed. She barely spotted the man's other arm as it tried to catch her foot. She rolled in place, bringing that extended foot to the ground, while her other foot spun up to take its place, tearing deeply into the man's forearm. It barked in rage. She scooted back another 2 spaces. "I'm Commander," she croaked. What madness had come over this thing? Did it just like killing things? "In Her Imperial Majesty's order." She had slid away right into the corner. The man had planned it that way, and she had played right into it. She was just another cornered animal fighting for her life. Another lunge, another kick in response. She was ready for when he tried to catch her foot again, and kicked up with the other leg. This time, she missed. The human caught her by his second foot, his other hand quickly grabbing her leg by the hook and seizing it firmly in place. In an instant, he rolled to the ground, keeping his body on the side of her immobile leg, stopping her from kicking out with either. He fell atop her, releasing her leg as he landed. He rolled her chest first into the ground, while she alternated between elbowing his ribs and stomach and using her fists to hammer at his thighs. Setting all decency aside in desperation, she tried to grab and tear at his manhood, but he kept his hips firmly pressed against her, leaving no room to strike. She tried another tactic, pushed herself off the ground. That only made things worse. Using the gap between her body and the floor, the man wrapped one arm around her entire body just beneath her bosom, locking her arms at her sides and crushing her torso into his. She began throwing her head backwards, fighting with every scrap of energy and whatever tools she had left at her disposal. She felt gratified when the back of her head made contact with the man's odd nose, feeling it crushed as it made a soft, clacking noise. It was odd. She'd always enjoyed hand-to-hand combat. Were she not facing a certain and swift death, she might have admitted to finding the sensations of the hot-breathing gentleman holding her tightly, pressing his body into hers from behind, to be mildly concupiscent. She normally preferred her gentleman to not be so forward, however, and not quite this big. Bark, bark, woof, bark, bark, woof, it said. The imp was gone. It had stopped translating his words, so it must not be translating hers either. That's why they couldn't understand each. The man's second arm joined the first, this time sliding up into her neck. The first hand then moved from below her bosom to her forehead, preventing her chin from guarding her throat. With a roll, he was beneath her now, with both of them facing the ceiling. His legs snaked around hers, holding them down. She pressed him tight against her throat, with his bleeding forearm and thick bicep, almost like a piece of wrought iron trying to remove her head. Her sight began flashing white again, this time starting at the edges. She could barely breathe as it was, but this was something else. An excruciating pressure built inside her skull. She was going to die in mere moments. Her soul would wander from star to star. She wanted to make peace with the Almighty in the last seconds, but she could only think of fighting. Fighting against this man-beast named Human. Pointless. Sure, she was caught by surprise, but she honestly thought that she would have stood a better chance. Instead, she was little more than a stupid slashing dummy. Not even a proper sparring partner for him. Sparring. She immediately stopped all fighting and went limp, slapped his arm on her throat 3 times. Her vision was fully white now, and she could not see. She could barely feel any of her body beyond the arm on her throat. Would it understand? This was just a translation problem, right? This man had to be intelligent, not a killer, or a monster, or a lunatic. Had to be. In her final, fading moments, she slapped his arm slowly, firmly, deliberately 3 more times. After the 3rd time, something happened. She could barely tell that the pressure on her neck was gone and her body had been shifted gently to the floor. Something soft had been placed under her head. The gentleman was no longer pressed against her. Though blurred, her vision began to return. She stared at the ceiling and blinked tears from her eyes. Human was crouching above her. Bark, 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 woof, okay, it said. My name is Lady Aranus Karamast, she barely managed to whisper. Daughter of Lady Jerusalka, Dame Commander in Her Imperial Majesty's Order of the Sacred God, and I am not an animal. Aranus's head fell to the side as she lost consciousness. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.